Today we got what are the true stories behind the Conjuring movies. My comments are Conjuring Cake Journey. Well, no, let's get started.
Franchises would take the world. Back in 2013, one of the biggest modern horror franchises would take the world by storm. The Conjuring was an
Conjuring movies coming out. This will be perfect.
instant hit, spawning 3 sequels and 5 spin-offs for the series. These movies need no introduction. They have been a huge draw for 5 spin-offs for
Oh, these are the main franchise. Okay. Conjuring, Conjuring 2, Conjuring, the Conjuring.
Series. These movies need no introduction. They have been a huge draw for horror fans for a while now. But what has always intrigued me more than the actual movies was the cases behind them. As we all know, the main
They're real.
films in this franchise have followed the real-life investigations of Ed and Lorraine Warren, a couple of extremely famous paranormal investigators who took a look into some of the most infamous hauntings in recent history. And with the new film coming out, I thought this would be the perfect time to revisit each one of the main films and discuss with you all the cases they were based on. And with all of that out of the way, I'm Nightmare Movies. And today, I want to discuss the cases that inspired the Conjuring movies.
Except if they get to the last one, we won't do that one because we kind of want to see the movie, y'all.
In 1971, the Perron family moved into their infamous farmhouse that was constructed all the way back in 1736. Almost immediately, the family began seeing full-body apparitions all throughout the 14-room home. This is when Carolyn Perron did some research into the history of the house. She had uncovered that the home had been in the same family for 8 generations and had seen some horrific events. Several of the family's children had drowned in a nearby creek, some of the family had hanged themselves in the attic, and one was even murdered. This, to her knowledge, explains the mass amounts of spirits connected to the house. However, there was one specific spirit that seemed to be the most hostile, a spirit that the family referred to as Bathsheba. According to Andrea Perron, the daughter of Carolyn, this spirit, quote, perceived herself to be mistress of the house, and she resented the competition my mother posed for that position. It was uncovered that Bathsheba was actually a real person by the name of Bathsheba Sherman, a woman who had lived on the property in the mid-1800s. She was rumored to have been both a Satanist and to have been involved in the death of a neighbor's child, though neither of these claims have been fully confirmed. Over the 10 years that the family lived at this farmhouse, the Warrens made multiple trips to the home to try and exorcise it from these spirits. This culminated in the event that we see in the film where Bathsheba possessed Carolyn and Ed Warren tried to banish it from her. According to Andrea, her mother began speaking in a language not of this world and in a voice not
Latin.
Her own. Her chair levitated and she was thrown across the room. After the seance, Roger Perron kicked the Warrens out and they never returned. The family continued to live in the
I heard about that. They just continue to live like that.
House until 1980 when they finally moved out and all of the paranormal happenings stopped. All of this was the inspiration for what would end up being the first Conjuring film. However, from my description, you'll probably notice some major differences from the film. Even Andrea states that only about 5% of the film is accurate to what actually happened.
I heard that like most of what really happened was way crazier.
But with the first one out of the way, we get to travel all the way to London for our second case and our second film.
You're about to lose $40,000 for your car accident because you don't know this one trick. Check this out.
In August of 1977, Janet Hodgson, one of the 4 children of Peggy Hodgson, was complaining the night before that her bed was wobbling. The next day, Peggy hears a loud crash upstairs. Assuming that the children are just messing around, she goes to investigate. As she enters the room, a large chest slides across the floor. Peggy moved it back to its place, and suddenly the chest moved on its own once again. Terrified, the family ran to their neighbors for help. The Nottinghams tried to calm the Hodgsons, and the father of the Nottinghams, Vic, went to go investigate. There, he also experienced something strange, and decided the only people who could handle this or the police. 2 police officers initially investigated the house and found nothing out of the ordinary. However, one of the police officers later was on record saying that she saw one of the large armchairs in the house move on its own, about 4 feet across the living room floor. This was the start of what would be referred to as the Enfield poltergeist. Over the next few months, press and paranormal investigators visited the home to witness the happenings. Most famously, a photographer, Graham Morris, visited the home and set up remote cameras all across the home. They were set to go off every 15 seconds, and he was the man who captured the most famous photos of Janet supposedly levitating in her room.
Nah.
Now, if you're wondering where Ed and Lorraine Warren come into this story, well, you might be a little disappointed by the truth. Ed and Lorraine only spent 1 day at the family's home. There, at the same time, was a member of the Society for Psychical Research, Guy Playfair. Ed and Lorraine's visit was essentially them going into the house, saying that there was an entity inside, and then telling Guy that there was money to be made off of writing books and selling movie rights.
The fuck?
Funnily enough, Guy did eventually write a book detailing his experiences in the home, where he maintains that there was paranormal activity in the home, but believed the daughters were responsible for faking some of the activity as well. This specific case is an interesting one for a couple reasons. First, there were numerous times where the girls, specifically Janet, were caught faking activity or pranking the people invited to the house.
Oh.
Janet was caught bending spoons, banging a broom handle against the ceiling, and even the photographic evidence looks more like Janet jumping off of her bed rather than evidence of her levitating. The other interesting part was how little the Warrens were actually involved in this case. Like I said, they were only there for a single day and did almost no investigating of their own. This is kind of confusing considering the existence of the second film in the series, and it seems, like the first film, quite a few creative liberties were taken. However, that didn't stop the film from being insanely successful just like the first, and so naturally, a third film was in the works. And this time, we're going to be looking at one of the strangest hauntings in US history. The story follows David Glatzel, a young boy who claimed that while he was cleaning up the family's rental property, an old man appeared in front of him and vowed to hurt him and his family if they ever moved into the property. David immediately told this story to Debbie Glatzel and Arnie Johnson. Initially, they brushed off his story, thinking it was a way of getting out of cleaning the house. However, things only worsened for David. He began experiencing night terrors. His behavior became strange and erratic, and bruises and scratches randomly started appearing on his body. 12 days after the initial encounter with this old man demon, the family called Ed and Lorraine Warren to investigate. Lorraine claims that she saw a black mist wrapping itself around David, a sign of a malevolent spirit, or in this case, multiple spirits. Lorraine had claimed that David was suffering from multiple possessions, so 3 exorcisms were performed to expel spirits from him. During one of the exorcisms, Arnie Johnson reportedly coerced one of the demons to possess him. After the exorcism had finished, Arnie returned to the rental property of the original spirit to examine an old well. This is where he claims that the demon took possession of him. Now, this is where we're going to get into some pretty graphic details of a real case. I just want to warn all of you. On February 16th, 1981, Arnie joined Debbie at her job at a kennel with Debbie's sister Wanda and her cousin Mary. Their landlord at the time, Bono, had bought everyone lunch and started drinking heavily. They all returned to the kennel and Debbie took Mary and Wanda out for pizza, feeling something was wrong. After the 3 girls returned, Bono was heavily intoxicated and became agitated at the group. The girls tried to leave, but Bono was able to snatch Mary and hold her there until Arnie arrived. There, an altercation took place. Wanda recounts Arnie pulling out a 5-inch pocket knife and growling like an animal. This is when Arnie proceeded to stab Bono multiple times. The report states that Bono had suffered 4 or 5 tremendous wounds, mostly to his chest, and one that stretched from his stomach to the base of his heart. Johnson was then discovered 3 miles away from the crime scene where he had no recollection of what happened. And now, things get even stranger. The day after the crime, Lorraine Warren informed police that Johnson was possessed at the time. This case became famous for being the first in history where the defendant was at the time. Day after the crime, Lorraine Warren informed police that Johnson was possessed at the time. This case became famous for being the first in history where the defendant, Arnie Johnson, claimed insanity by possession. The defense was immediately thrown out by the judge, but somehow the charges were dropped to first-degree manslaughter, and Arnie Johnson served 5 years in prison. This is probably Ed and Lorraine's most controversial case, especially with their involvement in the aftermath of the crime. It's also quite a divisive movie considering everything that I've discussed. But the final film in the mainline franchise is almost in theaters, and we have one last case to go through.
Should we go through it?
Our story starts in 1973. Jack and Janet had lost their home the previous year due to trailer for the newest Conjuring film. I'm left a little confused. I can only interpret so much from a trailer, but it seems like they're trying to connect it to another haunting the Warrens investigated, but from what I was able to find, this seemed to be an isolated case and not connected to the Warrens in any sort of way. The other prominent difference I saw.
Okay, like, I'm subscribed. Yeah.
Bye, have a great time.